The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Wednesday, November 20th. I'm sorry we didn't do a show yesterday. I think I told you Monday I wasn't feeling well. And yeah, I came back from wherever I came back from, Brazil, with some bug. Some bug. So slowed me down, it wiped me out yesterday. Yeah, I did not have the energy to do a show. So feeling a little better today. I'm really hoping this thing goes away by the time I get on a plane on Saturday. Lula's revenge, David says. That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. Lula's revenge. He planted a bug on me. Anyway, I did say in front of 1,000 people, I said something like, you should put Lula back in jail. You know, I keep doing that, right? I keep getting myself in trouble like that. So maybe that's what caused it. Anyway, it doesn't seem too serious. We'll see. And it doesn't seem like it's getting worse. It seems like today is better than yesterday. But energy's still low. So we'll go as long as we can today. And then we will go from there. We'll see how far we get today. But hopefully I can compensate for the fact that we didn't do yesterday by doing a longer show today. We'll see. We'll see if my energy lasts. But yeah, on Saturday I leave for an around the world, 3-continent, 20-day trip. So 21 day, maybe 20 day. That should be fun. That should be fine. All right. Let's see. We're going to start with some Trump appointments. Trump appointments. By the way, you guys think it's probably, I see on the chat, because I'm going to be in Gouda next week, but it's not Gouda. It's Gouda. Gouda. I want to see Lucas say Gouda. It's Gouda cheese, not Gouda cheese. All right. So Trump is rounding up with his appointments. The only real major appointment left is Treasury Secretary, and the battle for Treasury Secretary is heating up. A couple of new candidates are being interviewed today, including one of the guys I actually know. So that'll be interesting to see if he gets it. I very much doubt it. Mark Rowan from Apollo is somebody I've met a couple of times. I communicate with periodically, and Mark is, I think, today being interviewed for the Treasury Secretary position. I suspect he would be good, but I think he knows the right stuff. But I also suspect because of that he won't get the job. There are a number of other candidates. We will see one of the candidates, Ludwig, who was the co-chair of the transition team. The guy from Cantor Fitzgerald, an interesting financier, very, very successful billionaire. He has been appointed. He wanted Treasury Secretary. He really wanted Treasury Secretary. He was all in Trump's face about being Treasury Secretary. And Trump basically gave him Commerce Secretary to shut him up. So he's Commerce Secretary. Now, the thing about him is that he was all in on tariffs. So he was one of the few kind of Treasury Secretary nominees or potentials that were actually excited about tariffs. And so he's now in a Commerce Secretary position where he'll have a significant role to play in trade. And now we're still waiting. So that'll be somebody in the cabinet who very much supports tariffs. I still think we'll get the old trade representative, who is a huge tariff fan, in a senior position in administration. And then we'll see who Treasury Secretary is going to be. It's going to be very exciting to see who that's going to be. So that is the one big position open. I mean, there's still a bunch of lower level positions still have to be filled in, particularly looking at how they fill in the Health and Human Services underneath Kennedy. Is there going to be anybody there to moderate Kennedy? For now, Trump is nominated Dr. Oz. Remember Dr. Oz, another pseudoscience nut, as in charge of Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare and Medicaid. Dr. Oz is going to in charge of that. Actually, that department under the Health and Human Services is bigger than, in terms of dollars spent, I think it's bigger than the Defense Department. It's only going to grow. Medicare and Medicaid are the largest expenditures of government, and so, who better than somebody with the immense qualifications of Dr. Oz to manage that department? I mean, he will decide what you get reimbursed on. He and RFK will sit down and figure out. I don't know. They don't. We know RFK doesn't like pharmaceuticals, doesn't like drugs. Drugs are out, and I don't know. Dr. Oz, might like, I don't know, vegetable soup rather than drugs. Drugs no good. Well, I mean, if they really start saying, well, we're not going to reimburse for drugs, Medicare, remember, is the largest, by far, the largest insurance in quotes, right? The largest payer of medical expenses in the country. It's larger than the largest health insurance plans. It dominates healthcare. So if Medicare says, these GLP-1 medications, or COVID vaccines, or HIV/AIDS treatments, we don't believe in any of those anymore. We don't like them. What's that basically going to mean is people are going to get more sick. They're going to land up more often in hospital. And that has real economic costs. Of course, it has, more importantly, it has costs to the people who are not getting the best treatment they could get. And by the way, this will affect poor people more than rich people. Rich people will be able to, out of pocket, find a way to buy the vaccines or the medications that they need, probably. Although it'll affect all of us, because this will also mean that pharmaceutical companies will do less research because they're getting less reimbursed. So the profit margin, the profit in the future is less. I mean, these guys, RFK and Dr. Oz, two pseudoscience whack jobs. And I know I've been told not to call people names, just the evidence. Okay, not whack jobs. Two pseudoscience people who don't believe in modern science, who basically evade the science, evade the evidence, ignore the actual scientific evidence, and promote pseudo-scientific solutions to health problems. And now they're in charge of the largest, what do you call it? I don't want to call them Medicare insurance, because it's not insurance, right? It's obviously not insurance, but the largest payer of medical treatments out there. I think they like surgeries. So you probably see a decline in pharmaceuticals, which means an increase in illness and an increase in surgery. And an increase in deaths and a decrease in quality of healthcare in the United States. And I don't think anybody cares. I mean, I think Dr. Oz is going to be approved with flying colors. RFK Jr., maybe not. You know why? This is interesting. We'll just take an aside a minute from the most recent appointments. Isn't it interesting that we've got 4 basically 4 nominees that are in trouble right now. We've got RFK in terms of approval by the Senate. You've got Pete Hegseth, the Department of Defense. You've got, and then you've got, put aside Tulsi Gabbard a second, and then you got Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. And they're the ones, those 3, other than Tulsi Gabbard, they're the ones that are mostly in trouble right now. And the funny thing is, they're not in trouble because they lack qualifications. They lack qualifications massively. What does Matt Gaetz know about justice? He's a lawyer who's barely ever practiced, never run an organization, and is basically a bomb thrower. We'll get to Matt Gaetz in a minute. But why is it that they're all in trouble? I mean, does the new guy for Defense Department know anything really deeply about running a 3 million person organization? Does he know about procurement? Does he understand America's strategic positioning? Has he shown any evidence that he has an understanding and practiced at that? Has he managed large organization? No, none of that. He has no, other than being very pro-Trump and writing some books that are pretty, tough. Does he know anything about the Department of Defense? Who cares? The thing all of them are getting in trouble with, which is just hysterical, is character. Like RFK, you're going to hear all about the fact that I think he slept with 37 women the year before his wife committed suicide. And he told his wife that he'd slept with 37 women, and then she committed suicide. And then he attacked his wife at the funeral. Anyway, the guy's a creep, right? The guy's a creep. RFK as just a human being, he's a complete and utter creep. And then Matt Gaetz has participated, according to reports, I have no firsthand evidence of this, in sex and drug parties, orgies, probably maybe slept with a 17-year-old, and just generally is a kind of a creepy character in terms of his behavior. And then the guy who's up for defense, somebody accused him of sexual assault in 2017. He was never charged, and so on. Although he did pay her, and to avoid this becoming public, he settled with his accuser. Like, these are the things that matter. Now, this is bewildering. Bewildering. Why suddenly, out of nowhere, character matters to Republican senators. I mean, maybe Republican senators wouldn't have confirmed Donald Trump as president of the United States. Maybe. I don't know. It's possible, I guess. So, I mean, talk about Donald Trump is a man who lacks character, slept around, talks really ugly about women, treats people really, really badly. Remember those debates in 2016? They were pretty horrific, hard to watch because of his behavior. He lies constantly. He can't separate truth from lie, and the evidence of that has a long, long track record. I don't think he cares about lying. He's actually said he doesn't care about lying. He just cares about results. Suddenly, when it comes to these nominees, suddenly Republican senators seem to care about their behavior, and of course, there'll be somebody on our chat saying, "Oh, those are just rumors and gossip," because he doesn't care about character, because he didn't care about character with Trump, right? He didn't care about that, so why would he care about character with anybody else? Anyway, there are senators who have seen video of Matt Gaetz at some of these parties. There are senators who Matt Gaetz has actually, Republican senators who've actually with pride told him about his many conquest and sex and drug-filled parties. These are not rumors. These are pretty well established. But, for me, I don't really care, right? We got a president who is about as bad character as we've ever had. Why would I care about, Department of Defense or Health and Human Services about their character? What I care about is their competency, and these people are unbelievably incompetent. Or at least there's no evidence to say they will be competent. And with RFK and Dr. Oz, these are dangerous people. I won't say that with the Department of Defense guy, although it's a pretty important role. But RFK and this is major stuff. This is again, they spend more money than any other department in government. They're responsible to some extent for what is available vis-a-vis our health. They're responsible to some extent for, how long we will live, what kind of drugs are approved, what are not, what orientation we're going to have in the future in terms of medical research. And to put it in the hands of two quacks like this is pretty insane. I have told you repeatedly about the massive benefits that GLP-1, for example, medications seem to be having on all kinds of diseases that many of us are going to be suffering from in the future. And RFK is anti-GLP-1 medications. And not to mention the vaccines and what that would do if you actually became, actually from the top down became vaccine skeptics and articulated that and advertised that and pushed that. And then, RFK has a crazy, weird theory about HIV/AIDS, which is completely based on experts on HIV/AIDS, unscientific and unfounded. And right now, people are getting treatment for HIV/AIDS and doing very, very, very well. They're living normal lives, and that could go away. And because of this guy. So, this is really playing with fire. What else? Who else did we get? We got Commerce I talked about. We got a pro-tariff guy who's going to be now in charge of trade in the Department of Commerce, somebody who really, 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 really believes in tariffs. Or really, really believes in Donald Trump and is willing to say what is necessary in order to get on his good side. But, you should not be relieved because the appointment for Department of Education is so amazing. It's so amazing that it trumps everything else. We now have the former CEO of Worldwide Wrestling as the Department of Education secretary. This is a woman who, all in show because the whole Worldwide Wrestling was a show, got slapped around by her children, got beaten up by, it's just, I've seen videos today. It's pretty funny. If it wasn't serious, it would be pretty funny. Now, supposedly, her job is to dismantle the Department of Education. Maybe she can body check the Department of Education. And maybe dismantling is exactly what the Worldwide Wrestling experience will allow her, right? Will allow her. So yes, so that is that. Those are the new appointments that we got today. We're still waiting for Treasury, and in the meantime, J.D. Vance is really trying to get people to like Getz. That's a tough sell. A lot of people in the Senate are reluctant. I'm not sure how RFK is going to do. Again, he's got a big, messy personal life. I'm not sure anybody cares. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. Hard to tell. Pete Hegseth, nobody's really excited about this guy. I think because he's not qualified, but then they don't want to say he's not qualified because who is? Kind of, these days, of all the nominees that Trump has appointed. So they're focusing on this sexual assault claim, which might not be a sexual assault. I don't know. No charges were filed. I don't care about that. I care about his qualifications. I think there's a good chance he will be approved, tattoos or no tattoos. Christian conservatives unite, and maybe they'll approve him. Tulsi Gabbard, there's a little resistance there. I mean, she is ultimately a big-time Democrat, and they might be concerned about that. She's also has expressed herself many times in defense of Vladimir Putin. Now, maybe that's why she got the job. Maybe that she shares with Trump. I've always thought Trump was a Putin fan. Maybe they'll start the fan club within the American government of admiration for Vladimir Putin. But it is a little spooky that the person in charge of coordinating all intelligence from all different departments, all the way from the FBI to the NSA, to the CIA, to military intelligence, to really every branch of our intelligence agencies, those that we know about and those we don't, every single one of them will be sharing information with Tulsi and her department. She is responsible for the coordination. This is the department created after 9/11 to make sure that there was coordination, and yet she's a fan, or at least seemingly is a fan of Putin. Russian media, let's be clear, Russian media is a huge fan of Tulsi Gabbard, whatever that means. They love this appointment. They think she's very pro-Russian. So that might be Russian misinformation, but take it for what it is. And then, of course, she did famously in 2017 meet with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and claim that he was not an enemy of the United States and was not a direct threat to the United States, which I guess is kind of true. But of course, this is a regime very close to Russia and very, 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 very close to Iran. So here we have the Director of National Intelligence, tasked with overseeing multiple intelligence agencies, has access to the most sensitive intelligence we have, and yet friendly to both the Russian and Syrian regimes. I don't know, that again does not give me a sense of confidence in our national security. I don't know about you guys. But yeah. And then finally, Matt Gaetz, as we said, Matt Gaetz is there. There was a great tweet by Elon Musk about Matt Gaetz. I thought this was perfect. Let me just find this tweet. Where's Matt? What happened? There it is. All right. Here's Elon Musk expressing his support for Matt Gaetz. And you tell me if this is who you want is to head the Department of Justice. We call it the Department of Justice. This is Elon Musk. This is your, some of you think of him as John Galt. This is Elon Musk. Matt Gaetz has 3 crucial assets that are needed for the Attorney General role. So 3 crucial assets. What are the 3 crucial assets we need for an Attorney General? A big brain. Okay, so Matt Gaetz is super smart. Really super smart. Now, I don't know Matt Gaetz. But, yeah, is he? Really? That smart? Remember all the trouble he caused in the House? I don't know. It doesn't seem to really have helped Republicans that much. They got rid of Kevin McCarthy. They got Johnson. He tried to get rid of Johnson. Couldn't do that. Couldn't pull that off. Not sure where I see or where we should see or where we should look for the brilliance, the real brilliance. Now, Musk is brilliant, but where do we see evidence of Matt Gaetz's big brain? Big brain, right? All right. Maybe we'll enlighten. Anyway, so that's number 1. So 3 critical assets. 1, big brain. He has a spine of steel. He does not compromise. Again, I just don't know. Maybe this is true, but it does not compromise on what? That is important. Bad people also do not compromise sometimes when they have spines of steel, I guess. Do we know that Matt Gaetz really has a spine of steel? And again, what are the things that he will not compromise? Clearly, in the House, he has shut down a lot of what Republicans tried to do in the House on several occasions. And again, did that bring about some, is that, I don't know, is there real virtue there? Maybe. Spine of steel. And then the final one. Remember, this is the 3 critical assets that are needed for an attorney general role. The third one is he has an axe to grind. He has an axe to grind. Musk continues, he is the Judge Dredd America needs to clean up the court system and put powerful bad actors in prison. Gaetz will be our hammer of justice. Now, this is ridiculous. Judge Dredd is not a hammer of justice. He's a hammer of retribution. He is, Matt Gaetz has an axe to grind, not justice to grind. He's going to go after people he doesn't like or doesn't agree with politically, who he thinks might have done things that he does not approve of. This is not justice. Will he go after Republicans that might have done bad things? Well, of course not. I mean, this is clearly, he is there to go after the people who went after Trump. That's his only job. And then to reshape the Justice Department in Trump's image. Remember, the 3 deputies, attorney generals under him are all Trump lawyers. They're all people who worked for Trump as defense attorneys. So basically, we're turning the Justice Department into a legal group organized to go after people who went after Trump and to secure that, I don't know, MAGA controls justice in the future. Now, does this lead you to believe that this is a justice? You remember justice with a blind, her eyes covered, sword in one hand, a balance. No, I mean, this is about, this is worse than anything the Democrats have done. And the difference here is, the big difference is, it's out in the open. They're not even pretending that they're objective. They're not even pretending that what they're after is justice. They're not even pretending any sense of objectivity. They are going to turn the Justice Department into a machine to go after their enemies. And while I'm sure the Justice Department could do with a bunch of cleaning up, is this what you want? Really? We still live in a free society. And of course, Elon Musk goes on to say, as for those accusations against him, I consider them worth less than nothing. Well, of course he does. He has become best friends with Donald Trump. Why would he care about accusations relating to character? Anyway, very distressing. At least I find this very distressing. I really do hope that this is the one nomination. Well, actually, yeah, I really do hope. I mean, there are 2 that I would hope they defeat. There are 4 that I would like them to defeat. But, I'd like to see RFK go down. I'd like to see Matt Gaetz go down. I'd also like to see Tulsi and the Defense Department guy go down. I'd like to see all 4 of them go down. I'm not sure they will. This one is the easiest one, I think, for Republicans because they can focus on the nonsense. But this guy's not qualified, doesn't have the temperament, doesn't have anything to suggest that he should be, and doesn't have the qualifications and doesn't have, anything that would suggest that he should be there. Remember that Tulsi Gabbard blamed the U.S. and NATO for the invasion of Ukraine in 2022, spread, conspiracy theories about, I don't know, biological weapons that the U.S. was covertly developing in Ukraine, and all kinds of other stuff. So, yeah, I mean, she's bad. These guys are bad. These people are bad. And RFK is bad for the science, is bad for the economics of it. He's bad for pretty much every part of it. Okay, let me see. What else? Yeah, we talked about Dr. Oz. All right. I think we're good. By the way, just it is interesting that food company stocks have gone down quite a bit since the announcement that RFK would be head of Health and Human Services. Hopefully you don't have a lot of food companies in your portfolio. All right, let's see. What else did we want to talk about? So we covered that. I am waiting with bated breath to see who our new Treasury Secretary will be. Will it be somebody who even somewhat is willing to speak up and challenge Trump? Enrique has some biotech. I have all of the above because I am diversified, so I have everything. David says maybe RFK will get Trump to stop eating so much junk food. There's a funny picture of RFK and Donald Trump Jr. and one other person I can't remember on Air Force One, I guess, or not Air Force One, whatever the plane that Trump uses to travel around these days, and they're sitting at this table on the plane eating McDonald's. And you can see the expression on RFK, his disdain, just disdain for what he's eating and how, he's just got this expression. Now, on McDonald's, I'm with RFK. I mean, I haven't eaten McDonald's in many, probably decades now. It's probably been 20, 25, 30 years. But it was pretty funny to see that expression on his face. Yeah. But yeah, we're going to have a... It'll be interesting to see if RFK advocates for banning McDonald's, what Trump will eat. What will he be good with that? This is why I don't think that match RFK and Trump can last. I mean, Trump is... RFK is... You could at least say, okay, he seems to practice what he preaches. He's got a great physique for, what is he, 70 now? I wish I had a body like that. He's got a great body. He works hard. He lifts weights. Who knows what else he does, but he lifts weights. You can tell that he's strong and he's got a great body. But if you look, comparing him to Trump. All right. Luca thinks Musk will be out first and then RFK. Maybe. Hard to tell. All right. Let's talk a little bit about tariffs. And I apologize. I know I talk about tariffs all the time, and we keep coming back to it. And it's just not my fault, guys. The reality is that if you're doing a news show, tariffs are in the news constantly. It's the number one economic issue on everybody's minds. It's what Trump is really pushing for. Clearly, he wants to get this done. And there are all kind of views out there, and I'm sure we'll get it on the chat. He just wants to use it as a negotiating tactic. It says 4D chess, 5D chess, 6D, 5, 3. Anyway, it's his way of playing chess. He just wants to use tariffs to get other people to do what he wants them to do. It never worked the first time, so I'm not sure exactly what this is about. But anyway, tariffs is a big deal. It's a big deal because it potentially is a massive tax increase on the American people. Now, it's interesting because Trump really spent a huge amount of time, during this campaign telling us over and over again that Americans didn't pay the tax, that it wasn't Americans. Wait a second. Alexis says, Yaron, do not be humble. you're obviously thinking about you as Treasury Secretary. No. I mean, I think somebody asked me about Defense Secretary, and I was thinking about that. That would be more interesting. No, I mean, I would be a good Treasury Secretary, but not under Trump. Trump could come crawling and groveling, and I still wouldn't take the job. But he won't. Don't worry. Don't worry. I'm safe. It won't happen. God. So, this is a good place to make this announcement. So, I got an interesting text from Alex Epstein yesterday, I think, or the day before. I don't remember. Anyway, this week, I think the day before. And he said, why don't you do some positive shows in this sense? What would a rational political strategy be around two issues, immigration and China? So he said, why don't you do a show? And he offered even to interview me, to come on my show and interview me about these topics. So we might do that on one of the shows. But and I thought that was a great idea. Just do a whole show about what if I were immigration czar in this environment, right? So we're not talking about the ideal. We're not talking about in an objectivist world, right? In this environment, what would I do? What could be done to make things significantly better? It's kind of the kind of stuff Alex does vis-a-vis energy. I mean, Alex, well, at the end of the day, what he'd like is to dismantle the Department of Energy and the Interior Department, sell all public lands, and including all offshore public lands to the private sector, and for the government to just stay out of energy. That's not the prescription right now. Right now, you have to have a prescription for what you think will work now within the context of what is possible right now. So do that for immigration and do that for China. What would be U.S. policy towards China? Realistic policy in this context. And then I thought, that's really cool. Why don't I do that on everything? I should do an episode on if I were named, if I was Secretary of Defense, what would I do? What would be the policy for Secretary of Defense? Now, there's some overlap between that and China, but I think there's enough to say uniquely about defense more broader about that. And then what would I do if I was Secretary of Health and Human Services? How would you deal with that? How would you move towards more freedom in health and human services? And again, it's easy to say, privatize it all, get the government out, separation of state from health. But that's not useful. What are the steps you'd actually take? How would you shut down the Fed? How would we end the Fed? What would it take to end the Fed, right? What would it take? Boss says, a no-brainer on immigration. Everybody has agreed. Just give any PhD grad green card. Wow, it will boost the economy, and there's an agreement between everyone. No, nobody agrees on that. I mean, if everybody agreed, why isn't it passed? Trump doesn't agree to that. Not really. Certainly Milei, whatever his name is, Milei, his immigration guy, doesn't agree to that. Nobody agrees to that. But I also disagree with that. What's so unique about PhDs? Anyway, I'll do my show, and then we'll figure it out. But yeah, that, what about master's degree? Why not undergrads? Why not undergrads in STEM? Why not anybody with an engineering degree from anywhere in the world? What about people with PhDs in science and STEM from anywhere in the world? I mean, the things you could get done. And look, whatever I propose is not going to be literally doable in a sense that, you could convince them, but this is what you would fight for. Anyway, we'll get to that. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to start, I don't know when exactly, maybe soon. I'm going to take department by department, right? Department by department, and make proposals, like tax policy. Like, what are we going to do with taxes? Cut taxes? Just cut taxes across the board? How would you cut taxes? Which taxes would you cut? How do you deal with all that? So, and I'm going to make positive proposals around every aspect of the government as it is today, and do a show on each one of those. So some of them will be short because they're pretty simple. Some of them will be quite long because, like, the defense will probably be long because there's a lot of complexity there. There's a lot of things to consider and a lot of things to think about. So anyway, we'll do that. We'll cover that before inauguration. And you know, those of you who are well connected within the Trump administration can forward him my recommendations and see how that goes. Anyway, they're talking about tariffs. And Trump told us over and over and over again about tariffs that they're not a tax on the American people. American people do not pay this tax. That this is, China pays for it. So in a sense, tariffs are free, right? You get to increase production in the United States. Prices don't go up. And somehow the Chinese pay for something. We get revenue from the Chinese. All of that, bizarre. Anyway, lawmakers, Republican lawmakers, trying to come up with a deal where they will cut Americans' taxes in order to offset the increase in tariffs, which they recognize are a new tax on Americans. So first, kudos to Republicans for finally recognizing Alexis, you're on. Alexis says, I'd sponsor one of these shows. How to free the financial system. All right, deal. Yes. Yes. It might be more than one show. It might land up being more than one show. Because of all of them, I really do think, not because I'm biased around finance, but the web of regulation, of controls, taxes, incentives, distortions, and of course the very existence of the Fed with its money printing capabilities. So it'd probably be two shows, one on the Fed and one on financial regulation. But anyway, yeah, I mean, wow. I mean, that's a huge topic. But yes, that'd be fun to do. So you're on, Alexis. I will do how to free up the financial system. All right, all the way to getting rid of the Fed. So I kind of find it funny that Republicans are trying to do this. Now, part of the challenge is that Republicans don't want tariffs. Like, too many of them actually know that tariffs are bad. So, for example, Rand Paul says, I don't like tariffs. Number one, I think the consumer pays them, so they're regressive. They're a sales tax, basically. I kind of doubt tariffs would make it into a GOP tax bill, he said. But the very fact that they want a tax bill that offsets is funny because it contradicts Trump. I wonder if anybody will tell him that. Interestingly, you know, you could argue that if Trump wanted focused tariffs on particular goods, then you could use that as a negotiating tactic. But Trump wants broad tariffs. He wants 20% on everything coming into the country. It should be a dramatic increase in tariffs around the country. And you know, incredibly destructive. And you know, what's interesting about that too is that it doesn't actually reduce the trade deficit. You know, it doesn't reduce the trade deficit because exchange rates adjust. Exchange rates adjust because of that, right? People buy, if we buy less goods from China, and that reduces, you know, the U.S. demand for Chinese yuan, because when Americans don't need to buy as much Chinese stuff, they don't need as much yuan, then, you know, when demand for the yuan goes down, price of yuan goes down in terms of dollars. So in other words, the Chinese stuff keeps getting cheaper. So so we end up buying a bunch of Chinese stuff anyway. And then we accuse the Chinese of manipulating their currency, which we are doing by putting on a tariff. You could also see this on the flip side. The Chinese sell us stuff in order to get dollars. They're selling us less stuff. They still want the dollars. So they use their yuan to buy dollars, driving up the cost of dollars, driving up the value of dollars upwards. And this always happens. Broad-based tariffs raise the dollar. It could be why since Trump has won, the dollar has gone up in value. It was already very high. It hasn't gone up in value as much as it was about 6 months ago under Biden, but it's gone up in value. And the reason is that everybody understands that tariffs raise the value of the US dollar, and they're anticipating that. When in the first term, when Trump put tariffs on many Chinese goods, the dollar got stronger. And it usually goes stronger, if you look back at history, just before the tariffs kick in, because people know they're coming. Yuan gets weaker, the dollar gets stronger, however you want to look at it in terms of the relationship between them. And that makes Chinese goods cheaper for Americans. They buy more of them. So the trade deficit doesn't actually change. Yeah, J.D. Vance has said he wants to devalue the dollar. Indeed, Trump has said he wants to devalue the dollar. He wants lower interest rates. Tariffs do not help with that. Quite the opposite. As you increase tariffs, the dollar's value goes up, not down. If you want to devalue the dollar, if you want to make the dollar less valuable, you lower tariffs. You make it easier for people to buy, for Americans to buy foreign goods, which means it's increases the demand for foreign currency in order to buy those goods, which lowers their value, which increases their value relative to the dollar. It's pretty straightforward. It's devaluing the dollar in terms of other currencies, not in terms of its purchasing power. It's only in terms of the purchasing power vis-a-vis imports. But you still don't have more money than you would otherwise. So if you can buy more imports, it means you can't buy more domestic stuff, which is also a problem, right? So exchange rates cancel out at least part of the effect of the tariff. Tariffs also raise costs for American manufacturers because they're importers. Every American manufacturer imports at least some of his raw materials from, let's say, China. So now Americans have to pay more for the stuff that's coming in. Again, doesn't help the trade deficit. And there's study after study after study after study. I mean, I'm not going to bore you with all the economics of this, but the economics are pretty straightforward. Broad-based tariffs have no redeeming qualities. None whatsoever. And they've been shown historically to actually have hampered economic growth in the United States when they were imposed. And the fact that we have been reducing broad-based tariffs systematically now since World War II is actually one of the reasons this economy has done as well as it has in the post-World War II era. Tariff-free trade is good. And it doesn't matter what the other party does. I mean, I keep getting these people who come at me and say, but it's not fair because they have tariffs. The fact that somebody else taxes their own people doesn't mean you should tax yours. Anyway, tariffs bad. Every perspective. Now, focus tariffs. Can have an effect if you want to achieve that effect. You can make things, things from China. If you put 1,000% tariff on Chinese-made computers, then people will not be buying Chinese-made computers, right? They just won't. But what will happen? We'll buy American-made computers, Mexican-made computers, Taiwanese and Vietnamese-made computers, and to the extent that there was a reason they were made in China because of, I don't know, cheaper whatever, then other parties will step in, like Mexico and Vietnam and maybe Taiwan and others, to replace China. And indeed, Chinese companies will just go to Vietnam, build the same factories they had in China, or they'll build them in China, move them to Vietnam, stick on them a made in Vietnamese label, and send them to the United States. So even if you focus it on, you're probably not going to affect that you actually want. What you're gonna create is cronyism and all kinds of cheating in quotes behavior. So anyway, I'm glad to see Republicans have acknowledging that tariffs are a tax that we all pay. I'm glad to see that they're not considering it seriously, or too seriously, it seems, as part of a tax bill that they're going to have to pass, because you remember the 2017 tax bill expires. I think it was an 8-year, so I think it expires next year. So they're going to have a tax bill. They won't be able to include, they do not, at least there's some resistance among Republicans to including tariffs in that bill. Whatever happens to tariffs will have to come by executive order from Trump, and maybe if they gain some spine, you remember that spine that Matt Gaetz supposedly has? Maybe Republicans will get some spine to stand up to Trump and say no to him when the time comes, or at least push back on his interest in tariffs. Tariffs bad, always bad. I have tariff derangement syndrome, right? I have nothing good to say about tariffs. That cannot be, because objectively there's nothing good to say about tariffs. Cannot be. Brownie says John Cochran for Secretary of the Treasury. I mean, why would you want to inflict that on him? I want the lowest person possible to be Secretary of the Treasury. Why would anybody want to work for Trump? I don't think John Cochran would take the job if he was offered it. But I wouldn't wish it on him. I'd wish it on us. I think John Cochran would be a brilliant choice for Treasury Secretary. I'd love to see John Cochran there, but not under Trump. Not under Trump. So I have tariff derangement syndrome, as I said, because I have never seen a tariff I liked. Just like my Trump derangement syndrome, I've never seen anything Trump does that I like. I think he's all bad. I think tariffs are all bad. I have a number of these derangement syndromes. I have a Hamas derangement syndrome. I have a Hezbollah derangement syndrome, which is confusing because they're both HDSs. So I have a lot of HDSs. I have a woke derangement syndrome. I just have a lot of derangement syndromes. These are syndromes where I just don't see anything good about the thing. And as I've said before, I really don't see anything good in Trump. Even though once in a while he will do something good, I don't see anything good in Trump. All right, let's go attack the left a little bit. What the hell? So we haven't talked about American universities in a while, and there seem to be fewer sit-ins and tent-ins and so on. But the radical, crazy left has not given up, and they are committed to continuing their anti-Semitic attacks on Israel and Jews more broadly. And they're doing it the way they know best how to do it, which is through the curriculum. The way they have created, if you will, the way they've created the world in which we live, where you have these insane students, really. I mean, insane is too nice. Where you have these completely irrational students advocating for suicidal, irrational, ugly, homicidal ideas, is through the curriculum, it's through the ideas, it's through the philosophy, it's through what they have taught them. So they are doubling up on that and then making it a little bit more explicit maybe than it used to be. So if before you had to get to the evil of Israel and Jews through intersectionality and identitarianism and all of that, now let's just teach it straight out. I mean, let's not imply it. So a couple of courses. One, I don't think one has been withdrawn because it's so obviously disgusting, and the other one has not been withdrawn. This one that's not being withdrawn is at Columbia University. And if you read the description, it's quite reasonable. So this is a special course. It's in the poli-sci, politics and society. It's Palestinian and Israeli politics and society. That's the name of the course. That sounds very good, right? And then you've got, and even the course description is pretty good. It's the history of the Jewish Enlightenment in the 19th century Europe and the development of Zionism through the current peace process between the State of Israel and the Arab states and Palestinian national movement. It provides a historical overview of the Zionist-Palestinian conflict to familiarize undergraduates with the background of the current situation. Wow. I mean, that sounds like a good course. I would take that course, right? But then you look at who's teaching it. It's being taught by Professor Joseph Massad, a professor who has called October 7th, and I'm quoting, awesome and stunning. Stunning in a good way, not a bad way. So while the course description is going to pass Columbia's criteria, I'm sure, they're going to look at this, and whoever approves curriculum is going to say, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds very reasonable. Sounds very balanced. Very balanced. But then you look at who the professor is, you know how this is going to be awful. Now, at Berkeley, there was a class in English composition. It's called English Composition in Connection with Reading of World Literature. That's a pretty, I don't know, you know, how can anybody be opposed to English composition in connection with reading of world literature? And the theme, the specific title was Leninism and Anarchism, a theoretical approach to literature and film. Okay, I can probably see legitimacy in a course like that. Not completely nuts. You know, maybe it's going to be a little communist, but yeah, I mean, there's something to say about communism and anarchism, why Leninism particularly. But anyway, theoretical approach to literature and film. I have a feeling this is a big, major BS class. But here's the course description. Now, the course description was written, it turns out, by a couple of graduate students who didn't have kind of the political acumen to not say what they actually thought. This is the title. This is Leninism and Anarchism, a theoretical approach to literature and film. Course title. With the US-backed and funded genocide being carried out against indigenous Palestinians by the Israeli occupying forces, many have found it difficult to envision a reality beyond the one we are living in today. At the same time, we have also seen a rise in global socialist, and in particular Leninist movements that are actively combating this destructive imperial agenda. From Hamas revolutionary resistance forces combating settler colonialism to a continuous anti-imperialist politics by Cuba, Vietnam, Venezuela, China, and the DPRK, that's North Korea, I think, and various indigenous and First Nation peoples around America. Anyway, so now, once the university realized that that was the description, they took it off. Now, the course might still be taught with a different description, but now the course has no description. The description just disappeared. So in other words, here is the idea. Leninism are the good guys. The Leninists are the good guys, not Stalinists, This is the more moderate form of homicidal, mass slaughter, mass murder, communism. Leninism are the good guys, and the good guys are manifest in Hamas and in Cuba, Vietnam, Venezuela, China, and North Korea. They're the good guys. And this class, you're going to study, I guess, how this is related to world literature in film, literature and film, and how the bad guys, who are the bad guys? America and Israel. Broadly speaking, the West. This is, you know, if you're going to Berkeley to study anything but STEM, this is the kind of garbage you're going to encounter. Just as part of kind of the general anti-Semitism, you know, it's certainly in these courses in Berkeley and in Columbia, but of course this manifests itself into people's adulthood. And we saw a Hamas protest, pro-Hamas protest, marching through an ultra-Orthodox community in New York, basically threatening anybody who stepped out of their home. I think that was yesterday, or maybe it was Monday. And in Berlin, basically the police have told, I mean, just think about this. Let this sink in a little bit. In Berlin, the police have told Jewish and gay people to hide their identity in certain Arab neighborhoods. In other words, the police cannot protect Berlin citizens, residents, from violence in certain Arab neighborhoods. It really is kind of unbelievable. And they say so. This is something that the Berlin chief of police said. Yeah, don't go into those neighborhoods. If you do, take off your yarmulke, take off your any symbolism that you might be Jewish or gay. I think the police should encourage gays and Jews to go into these neighborhoods. They should monitor it carefully. And anybody who inflicts violence against those gays or Jews should be immediately arrested and put on a plane and parachuted, I don't know, into Damascus maybe Kabul. I mean, that's what they should do, right? They should tell the people who are violating rights to stay home or ship them. No, into Gaza, it just complicates things in Gaza. You don't want to ship them to Gaza. We want fewer people in Gaza, not more people in Gaza. Do you know, by the way, just an interesting stat. It's just an interesting stat. Do you know that there are more people in Gaza now than there were when the war started? Like, since October 7th, more babies have been born in Gaza than people Israel has killed. This is, I have to admit, by every measure, by every standard, what's happening in Gaza is the worst attempt at genocide in all of history. I mean, the Israelis are unbelievably incompetent. I mean, the population is literally growing while they're at war with it, which is just, something is very wrong with the whole attitude. Yeah, I think Jews and gays should be used as bait to decide who gets to stay in Germany and who doesn't. We can export this strategy all over Europe. We can do it in certain towns and neighborhoods in England as well. Use gays and Jews as bait. Actually, we should have undercover policemen dressed up with yarmulkes and holding hands, male policemen, or maybe female policemen, holding hands, walking down the street in order to see who attacks them. And then those people arrested immediately and sent to Kabul. Kabul is good. Kabul is not near anywhere. More people in Kabul really doesn't hurt any of us. So Kabul, I'm settled on this. The nation should be Kabul. I mean, there you go. This should be the largest sting operation in European history. Yeah, exactly. I mean, David says use Ben Shapiro's bait. No, but the thing is, you don't have to use Ben Shapiro's bait. You just have to dress up like Ben Shapiro. Like, get all these policemen to dress up like Ben Shapiro, go into the neighborhoods, and do it. Right? Yeah. That should be the European strategy. Because not all Arabs are bad. Not all Arabs would attack Jews and gay people. Those who do, should be deported immediately without any questions asked. And all very easy to document. All right. And those same Islamist idiots wouldn't even learn from it, so they'd probably keep doing it. No, they don't even need to talk like a band. You guys are getting too in the weeds. I just gave you a massive, brilliant strategy on how Europe can cleanse itself of its worst elements. All right. One final one. Turkey. Turkey, by the way, is bombing the Kurds. And they've cut off water to 1 million Kurds. 1 million Kurds with no water. Turkey just shut off the spigot. Remember, Turkey is a NATO country. And yet, nobody cares. Have you seen this in the news? There's this idea that Turkey is bombing Syria, bombing Kurds, bombing civilian populations, and cutting off electricity and water. Has this made it into the news? Has anybody seen this? No. Now, in addition, interestingly enough, it turns out that the Hamas leadership has actually left Qatar and is now in Turkey. That is bizarre. Turkey's a member of NATO. What happens if Israel takes out a Hamas leader on Turkish soil? Is that an attack of Israel on a NATO country? Does that mean Article 5 and NATO has to come to Turkey's defense and attack Israel? The whole thing is bizarre. Why is Turkey a member of NATO? I get its strategic location, but I'm not sure location is that helpful when you have a regime as hostile as Turkey's regime is to the very basic Western values, and is hosting some of the biggest enemies. So, yeah, I mean, we have Turkey hosting terrorists defined by the United States. Could U.S. file for extradition? Is there an extradition treaty between the U.S. and Turkey? I think it is. I think there is. Should the United States file to extradite these war criminals? Now, of course, Qatar was supposed to be a U.S. ally, so they could have gotten them from Qatar. The whole thing is pretty nutty. I mean, crazy, bizarre, but there you have it. All right, what do we have still? Ukraine. We have a few things on Ukraine. Yeah, we talked about the missile strikes, that Ukraine is now using missile strikes, using American and British-made missiles to strike within Russia for the first time. Everybody freaked out about World War III, and we talked about this the other day. Russia is depleting its troops, its reservoirs of ammunition and tanks and everything else. It is going to be interesting how long they can last. Of course, they probably won't have to last because Trump will probably give them much of what they want anyway. But it is the case that I think Russia is struggling. And the more, the U.S. just approved sale, I mean, this is amazing to me, just approved sale of landmines to Ukraine. Landmines. They could use landmines before this. Imagine if Ukraine now places thousands of landmines in the coast district of Russia where they've occupied Russia, or they put landmines in the way of Russian advancing troops, which they haven't been able to do up until now. If the United States had provided these weapon systems and provided the permission to use them 2 years ago, then the war would be very, very different. War would be very, very, very different. An interesting development, though, in that part of the world. I think I mentioned 2 days ago that a couple of cables, internet cables, telecommunication cables were cut between Germany and Finland, and then between Sweden and Denmark, I think. And nobody knew exactly who had done it. Well, now it looks like they do know who did it. And it's kind of interesting, right? They found the ship that is probably responsible for this. And that ship is a Chinese ship. It's a Chinese commercial vessel, the Yiping 3, which had docked in Russia and was heading out of the Baltic Sea. And it turns out that it dragged its anchor on purpose, because you don't drag an anchor not on purpose. And it dragged its anchor in a way that cut the two cables. Now, I'm a little curious about how that happens, but I guess it's possible. I mean, it just happened. It also turns out that the Yiping 3's captain is a Russian national, even though it's a Chinese ship. Now, in the meantime, the Danish have used some provision of maritime law that's only been used once before in 1959 by the United States, to actually force the ship to stop. Supposedly, Danish soldiers or Navy personnel have boarded the Yiping 3, and Sweden and Denmark are running investigations about what the hell happened here, why this happened, and who is ultimately responsible, who gave the orders, and what exactly is going on. Is it China? Is it Russia? Is it both? Is it neither? Is it just this crazy captain who did it by just because he's pissed off, or was he drunk? Anyway, I don't know that we'll ever know, but the Danish will know, and they are running the investigation right now. And again, they have warships surrounding this Chinese ship, and they have stopped it and they have boarded it, and good for the Danish. I'm all with the Danish, and we will see now kind of what this leads to, and whether we will get public information about, what exactly happened, and to the extent that people know why it happened. This is called Article X of the Submarine Cables Convention. Again, it's only been used, this Article X, once before, and that is in 1959 by the United States. Yep, great to see the Danish Navy in action. That is cool. All right, finally, let's end in some good news. We're about a year into Milei's tenure, and things are going about as good as the most optimistic people could have expected, I think. Investors are doubling down on Argentina's stocks and bonds. The local stock market has gone up 125% over the last year. It sucks because I got in too late, so I'm only up like 25% since I invested. But I bought an ETF, an Argentinian ETF, a few months ago. The dollar bonds, so in dollar terms, dollar bonds are up 90%. So that means the confidence of investors that Argentina is going to pay back its debt has increased dramatically. By a lot of measures, the economy is doing much better. It's not doing great yet, but it's doing much better. Inflation just hit a 3-year low at 2% on a monthly basis. Now, 2% is way too high, right? But, you know, America is targeting 2% annually. This is 2% monthly. But way, way, way down from where it was. Argentina is running the first budget surplus it's had in 15 years. GDP growth, so a number of economists are projecting GDP will grow 8.5%. That's huge. That's huge, right? Stock market, we said the stock market. So, yeah, business at least is thriving. It's starting to pick up. And public spending is being cut. Taxes cut some, like import taxes, tariffs are being cut. Others still need to be cut. Markets are being opened up. Regulations are being eliminated. Not enough, but more to come, hopefully. So a lot of really, really good stuff has happened. And the response is positive. Milei is still popular in spite of the fact that all this does come at a cost. Look, this is not painless to a large extent because I don't think Milei had the tools to do everything he would have liked to do. So he didn't have the tools to completely deregulate. He didn't have the tools because he needs Congress for that. He didn't have the tools to, for example, change labor laws because the courts ruled against him. So Milei needs parliament. He needs parliament. And he won't have parliament until, if he ever has parliament, it will only be after the elections late next year, where he might try to get a majority or try to get a significant presence in parliament to influence their voting. Right now, he has nothing. He's too small of a presence in, I mean, given how small he is in parliament, the success is amazing so far. But what he's done with the limited power he has is truly amazing and should inspire anybody who thinks you can't change. Nothing could change. Nothing ever changes. Well, something big has changed in Argentina. And there's a lot more to come. You know, they're sitting on massive reserves of natural gas. There's an entire basin there that is just eager to be fracked. And they just signed a deal to export natural gas to Brazil. And it really does look like Argentina is on the right path. I mean, I really, 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 really wish I could say the same thing about the United States of America. We'll see. But Argentina, on path, on target. It continues to be exciting to watch. We'll keep monitoring it. We'll keep seeing what happens. You know, Milei did do a few things that one could consider compromises. He met with Xi and had a cordial conversation with him. He signed a deal with Brazil after he called the Brazilian president horrible names and a communist. But overall, he stuck to his guns, done amazing things. And again, I'll just repeat, the big difference between Milei and Trump. And maybe Milei doesn't realize this big difference, but the big difference between Milei and Trump is Milei believes in something. Well, two big differences. Milei believes in something. He believes in freedom. He believes in liberty. Trump doesn't believe in anything. And second, Milei knows economics. He knows economics well. Trump, as I've said before, has a 5-year-old understanding of economics, or as a very, very primitive perceptual level understanding of economics. He really doesn't understand economics at all. Milei does, deeply, has a deep understanding of economics. But more importantly, Milei has principles. He has ideas. He believes in something. I don't agree with him on everything. A bunch of stuff I don't agree with him on. But he has ideas. Trump has no ideas. No ideas. Studying, somebody says didn't Trump study finance at Wharton? You don't study economics when you study finance, first. I taught finance. We didn't teach economics. Knowledge of finance, knowledge how to do finance, how to do corporate finance, does not give you any insight into economics. And I don't think Trump understood the foundations of finance. He doesn't. He couldn't have said what he has said about trade if he understood the foundations of finance, or about trade deficits if he understood the foundations of finance. He doesn't. So just because you study finance at Wharton and you get a passing grade studying finance at Wharton doesn't mean you know anything about anything. Generally, I don't know if he do an undergrad at Wharton or an MBA, but undergraduates in business finance are a real waste of time, and MBA is a pretty lame degree unless you need the diploma for some reason. But here they are. Bobby Hill says Trump is always 5 steps ahead. It's so much fun to watch them. It is so much fun to watch mindless Trump syndrome in action and predictable. We know exactly what they'll say every single time because mindlessness always manifests itself in the same way. There's no surprises when it comes to mindless Trump syndrome. I wish I had a hot tea right now. That's what I need. All right. We have a bunch of questions. Let me thank some of the super chatters. Nev Fell, thank you. Stephen, thank you for the $20. Wes, thank you for the $50. Really appreciate that. And let's see who else we have here. By the way, do you know there's a store, there's a YouTube store where you can buy like mugs and T-shirts and stuff for the Yaron Brook Show. So check it out. There's a tab on YouTube in my channel with store. See if you want to buy some mugs or shirts. And if anybody has ideas, like is there a Yaron Brook quote that you would love to see on a T-shirt? Then let me know, and we'll start creating T-shirts that have those quotes and put them up in the store so you guys can enjoy them. All right. Bradley says, Trump graduated with a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Pennsylvania in 1968. Well, I mean, that says a lot about the quality of two things. An economics degree from the University of Pennsylvania in 1968, and two, Trump's mind. He either was just, the quality of that education sucked, or he did enough to get passing grades but didn't understand anything. Because, I mean, he literally doesn't not understand, like, the very, very basic Econ 101 stuff. I mean, tariffs are paid by the Chinese. He doesn't understand the very, very, very basic. Even at Wharton, a pretty corrupt place, even at Wharton, would it be a Wharton? University of Pennsylvania. Wharton is the business school, so economics is probably outside of the business school. But it depends. Some econ departments are in the business school. Some econ departments are not in the business school. So I don't know what Wharton's is. University, economics professors today are all neo-Keynesians. Back in '68, many of them were Marxists. That would explain a lot. But he had some Marxist professors. I'm not putting that on a T-shirt, Drin. It's a pretty good quote, but I'm not putting it on a T-shirt. It is one of the all-time classic tweets that I received as a comment. All right. Yeah, we should probably, maybe somebody should probably check out who was teaching at the econ department at Wharton in 1968. That would be kind of interesting. All right. Let's see. A few things, a few reminders for you. We have so Wharton does do undergraduate degrees in economics. I don't think it does. Maybe it does PhDs in economics as well. I don't know. All right. Forget that. Let's see. Remind you, Alex Epstein is a sponsor of this show. And Alex is the best mind out there on all things energy, fossil fuels, climate change, and environmentalism. He's just such a resource. He's just such an amazing, amazing resource that I encourage you all to take advantage of it. And you'll learn so much. You'll be able to muster much better arguments when you argue with all your environmentalist friends. He provides you talking points. You might know all this, but you don't know how to put it exactly into words. Well, he provides you with that, and he gives you that. So I encourage you to sign up for his Substack and to support his work. alexepstein.substack.com. alexepstein.substack.com. And of course, the Ayn Rand Institute. The Ayn Rand Institute is doing a webinar with Don Watkins and Nikos. I think it's Nikos, the one, the only objectivist who goes by just one name. And they are doing a webinar on the value of consumption. How to be a guilt-free, I don't know, what do you call it? And how to enjoy consuming. And you can find out how to attend. I actually think it's going to be a fun webinar, right? A really fun webinar. So I encourage you to attend. You can get information about when exactly and the link and how to sign up for it and all of that. I'm pretty sure it's free. And you can do that at aynrand.org, AYNRAND.org/start here. aynrand.org/start here. All right. All right. Let's turn to your super chat questions. And sorry, the pace is going to be slow because I'm just, didn't want to do that. 1 second, I'll be right with you. Because this cough is slowing me down, that's why. All right. Let's see. We have David. David has a couple of $50 questions, and then we'll get to the rest of the $20 questions. Mary Eileen, thank you. And Gail, thank you. Really appreciate it. By the way, if you're listening to this not live or don't want to do a super chat for whatever reason, or don't want to do a sticker where you can support the show without actually asking a question, which is a great way if you're not sure what you ask, you can just do like Gail and Mary Eileen. That's great. We've got about 170 people watching right now. You can do you can do a sticker. You can support the show on Patreon, patreon.com, and just put Yaron Brook Show, and you can support it that way. One of the ways in which you can do that, which I'm highlighting now, you can also do it on PayPal if you don't like Patreon for a reason. Also, I learned from an insider at YouTube. I actually had a call with somebody at YouTube, and I asked, what can I do? What can I do to get more views? What can I do to get the show more visibility? And she said engagement. It's all about engagement. Engagement. So first of all, thank you to all of you for being on the chat, even those of you who are obnoxious and unfriendly and actually don't want to see me succeed. Your chats actually increase visibility of this show on the algorithm. So the more you chat, the better it is in the algorithm. So please comment, chat, but also like Like is the simplest, easiest, cheapest way you can support the Yaron Brook Show. Just go to the like function over there and press like, and that'll do it. And Lucinda just came in and gifted 5 Yaron Brook Show memberships, and that's another way in which that kind of interaction can significantly improve our algorithmic appeal, sex appeal. Yeah, improve the sex appeal by doing things like gifting memberships or liking the show or any of the other things that can be done. Just interacting. Sharing is, of course, the best thing you could do. Sharing takes a lot of courage, I think. And some of you, I know, hide your true identity. So I don't expect everybody to do that. But sharing, of course, is the ultimate. But we have about 170 people on the show right now, 70 likes. 100 people watching the show and don't like it. I find it hard to believe. So just press that like button. It doesn't cost you a dime. Doesn't cost you a dime. All right. David says, what are the chances that bad effects of Trump appointments are ignored by the tribal supporters, even after predictions about them come true? Oh, I think, I don't know, 100%? I mean, tribes don't stop believing, don't stop supporting, don't stop embracing the tribe unless the tribe is crushed, right? And what they do is they constantly find rationalizations. They constantly find ways to explain it. It'll never be Trump's fault. It will always be somebody else's fault that things didn't work. So failure will not reduce the, Bob Hill is never going to come on this thing and says, yeah, I was right, Trump failed. Never. That's never going to happen. It never happened. All the people, every time I predicted some bad thing that Trump would do, and it happened, it never happened the first term. Nobody ever came on my chat and said, Yaron, you were right. Never. So it just will never happen because they can't, again, mindless Trump syndrome. They can't actually comprehend that. Whereas on occasion, when, look at that, I got my hot tea. Pretty amazing service I get at this house. What was I saying? Yeah, I mean, when Trump does something good, like he cut corporate taxes, I said, that's great. Corporate taxes, best thing Trump did domestically. When Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem, cool. It's good thing. Now, I think everything Trump does is tainted by the fact that it's Trump. I've got Trump derangement syndrome, but the things in and of themselves are good. All right, Fred Harper once said, equal is unfair cover on a shirt. There might be one. I mean, are you sure it doesn't exist already in the store right now, in the shop? If you go to the shop right now, we don't have equal is unfair. Anyway, I will make sure that we get an equals unfair. Yeah, there is. There's a hoodie. There's a hoodie with equal is unfair with a cover of the book on the hoodie. And there is a t-shirt. If you guys want a t-shirt or a hoodie or a mug with equal is unfair on it, it's available in the shop. The book cover. Yes, the book cover. The book cover is right there. Right there. And I've also got like a red Make America Great Again cap, but it says Yaron Brook Show instead of Make America Great Again. Yeah, go to my shop, buy some equals unfair t-shirts. Anyway, unfortunately, David, I don't think people learn from experience. There's very little evidence to suggest that people actually learn. Did the communists learn from the failure of communism? Is socialism unacceptable because of what happens in Venezuela? Or do they find rationalizations to explain it all away, to blame somebody else, to make it impossible? So MAGA will not change. Now, people at the margin will change. So the American people won't vote for failed strategies. So bet that 30, 40% of the American people or 50% of the Republican Party that loves Donald Trump will not change their position. They won't budge no matter what happens. no matter what happens. As Donald Trump said himself, he could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody with a gun, and they'd still vote for him. He knows it, but the MAGAs will always deny it, even though deep down they know it's true. Okay, David also asks, also $50. Thank you, David. Is mainstream media complicit in the Republicans' message? They're pushing the nuclear threat narrative after Ukraine launched American missiles into Russia. Yes, they're absolutely complicit. And a big part of the complicity is that they're not dealing with the fundamentals. Like, how many people are actually going after his appointee with regard to the Defense Department and asking kind of the tough questions about 3 million people reporting to him, a budget close to $1 trillion, the future of American defense, the future of our allies, sophisticated weapons systems. What is the relationship going to be between his Defense Department and Silicon Valley? Is he going to build more? Is he going to advocate for building more nuclear-powered, aircraft carriers, massive aircraft carriers, or is he going to shift towards drones and lasers and electronic warfare? I don't know. Those are the kind of questions that I would ask. And certainly, if I was in the Senate and he came in front, I would want to ask those questions. I don't care that much, in this case, about a sexual harassment claim from 7 years ago. What I care about is, what does this guy actually believe about American defense? And why should I think? What would give me reason to believe that even if he has some good ideas, that he has the ability to implement them, given, and if you don't, I don't know how much you realize, given the unbelievable bureaucracy that the Department of Defense is, that the Pentagon is, and the roadblocks to any kind of change that they will present, and the corruption that exists there with what are called the primes. These are the what Eisenhower called the military-industrial complex, the big weapons manufacturers, and them having people within the Pentagon in their pocket. I mean, that to me is much more important than woke. That is the most important thing, is to get generals who can make decisions about weapon systems that are not tied to their own future employment by one of these companies, but are tied to the actual needs of the troops on the ground and the actual strategic needs of America looking into the future. That's what I want to know. And is the mainstream media asking those questions? I don't think so. And to the extent that they're not, and did they ask about Trump? I mean, people say that the media was biased against Trump. I don't think that's quite true. Because the media didn't, articulate to the American people the flaws in Trump's policies. They didn't remind the American people maybe MSNBC did, but I'm talking about the media more broadly, just how bad some of his policies are and just how flawed of a human being he is. I think they were soft on him. I know. You guys think they were incredibly biased against him. I think they were soft on him. I think Trump is a lot worse than the New York Times presented him to be. Because the New York Times and the Washington Post, they do superficial stuff. It's all superficial. But every time people talk about leaving Afghanistan, how often did the mainstream media mention? How often did they mention that Trump signed a peace deal with the Taliban and actually wanted to invite the Taliban to Camp David? How often was that said? I don't think it was said. I don't remember people bringing it up. I bring it up all the time. They called him names. They called him a racist and a fascist and a Nazi. Okay, but that didn't convince the American people, because that's just gratuitous. I'm talking about actual things that he did that are bad. So, oh my God, I've got a bunch of people entering the chat for the sake of the algorithm. Cool. Just algorithm. I don't know. You got to pretend, guys, because the algorithm might be smart. And they might look for algorithms. So, how many, that's the dumbest answer I've ever seen, Bob, comment I've ever seen. Afghanistan is their country. Does anybody deny that? It's not our country. I'm pointing out, this is exactly the mindless. I wonder if Bob Hill is actually Scot. He comes across as Scot. Do you guys think Bob Hill is Scot? Anybody who's not blocked Bob Hill yet think Bob Hill is actually Scot? He has this stupidity factor going. All right. No, I mean, the media is not my heroes because they're weak. They did not go after Trump on substance. They went after Trump on, name calling. Name calling. Now, I'm not going to get moderators. To get moderators, every single one of you who are listening to the show right now would have to make a substantial monthly contribution on patreon.com. Because the reality is I'd have to pay moderators. And, there's a whole crew I'd have to pay to do the kind of show you guys want. But that requires big money. And I've not, we need revenue of $1 million. And then we'll do the Ben Shapiro thing. All right, Remo. Because you're not going to OCON Berlin, you have to make it up with us by giving us your favorite tourist recommendations in Berlin. I think you should boycott. No, I'm kidding. I think you should demand that I come to OCON Berlin, right? I think you should demand that I be invited. I don't have many recommendations about Berlin because I don't particularly like Berlin, although I was the one who suggested Berlin as a good city to have the conference. It's cheap, it's young, it's a place that's relatively easy to get to, and it's a place, although it has an awful airport, it's a place that is very central in Europe, and I think young people like to go to Berlin. I think it's a cool place to hang out. But me, I don't particularly like Germany at all. So I'll only give you 2 recommendations in Berlin. So first, the art museum in Berlin is pretty spectacular. It has some beautiful, beautiful pieces and relatively unknown because German artists are not particularly known. This is particularly 19th century art. This is Ayn Rand conference, not OCON. So it's an Ayn Rand conference in Berlin in, when is it? In March. Middle of March. You can find information about that also on aynrand.org/here. So I'd go to the art museum, pay attention, the staircase. Next to the staircase, walking up, there is a beautiful, beautiful sculpture. But there's a bunch of good sculpture in the art museum and some good painting. So I definitely recommend the Berlin Art Museum. And then the only other thing I would recommend is go to see the wall. Go to see the remnants of the wall. I mean, I think that's worth doing. I will be speaking, by the way, in Berlin on, December 1st, I think? Or maybe December 2nd. One of those two. And that information is all available on yaronbrookshow.com. At the Museum for Communist Atrocities or something like that, which is also probably worth visiting. I've never been there, but I'm going to go and see it and find out. Yeah, I mean, I don't think. So Luke says our spamming worked with 171 people. I don't think that's driving the algorithm right now. I think it drives the algorithm after the show, how much interaction there is. But maybe it drives it right now as well. I don't know. We also got 263, 283, something like that, watching on Twitter. And I think we've got like one person on Facebook. Facebook is just dead to me. For me, to me. Facebook's just dead. I think 2 people are watching on Facebook. So we've got 170 something here. 283 on Twitter, and 2 on Facebook. Like somewhere along the line, I lost Facebook. You know what we could do if you want more people is go to Twitter and share the show on Twitter. That spamming will work. All right, Alexis, as a European relying on the U.S. for medical innovations, that is my evil laugh. How much life expectancy do you reckon I've lost following the nomination of RFK? Well, it really depends. Are they going to be approved, and will they be able to achieve the evil that they actually seek? Right? That is not clear. A lot of times, bad people don't quite do as much damage as you would expected them, if you would expected them to do. So so it's I don't know how many years. It could be significant in this sense. And in that sense, we will never know because it's alternative universe in which they didn't get elected. The reality is that there are medical innovations right now that are happening that could really extend human life quite significantly. I mean, just GLP-1, from what we're seeing, and again, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not an expert, but just from what we're seeing, GLP-1 is an amazing, amazing drug that could have profound impact on your life in the short run. And will RFK kill it? Probably not. He probably doesn't have the power to do that. Will he make it more difficult? Yeah. And what about the next drugs? I mean, there's some revolutionary treatments. What about the mRNA vaccines that are curing cancer? mRNA vaccines curing cancer. And he is committed to being anti-mRNA vaccines. Not just COVID, but mRNA vaccines in principle. So, I mean, these people are, RFK is nuts, and I don't understand anybody, I'll just say it, I don't understand anybody who likes RFK. I think he is, I mean, he's the bottom of the barrel. He is a leftist, environmentalist, anti-science. He's anti-science on climate change. He's anti-science on healthcare. Conspiracy theory wacko who had a worm eat his brain, according to him. And if some objectivists out there like him, that is beyond my comprehension. David, ever heard the term Kakistocracy? Governments led by the worst possible choices. No, but yeah, I mean, we're getting there. I mean, we're getting. I mean, look, Biden's choices were not good, but they weren't crazy. They were conventional. They were status quo. They weren't going to change anything dramatically. Here they're going to change. They have the potential. I'm not sure they will. They have the potential to change things dramatically for the worse. For the worse. Remo says, can you share with us a great story regarding your interactions with Mark Rowan? For example, has he ever told a story about time at Drexel with Michael Milken? I can't really. I mean, my interactions have been brief and focused about Ayn Rand. He's a fan of Ayn Rand's. He loves Ayn Rand. Loved Atlas Shrugged. Mark Rowan was also very involved in forcing the president of Penn, University of Pennsylvania, that university that graduated Donald Trump with an economics degree of all degrees, he was very involved in withdrawing his support from University of Pennsylvania and pushing the university to fire their president. So Mark Rowan was a real hero about a year ago around the whole campus demonstrations. And he's a good guy. He is a good guy. And of course, he worked for Drexel, and he was pretty young during the 80s with Mike Milken, but he was there. Leon Black, who I think, founded Apollo, who was his boss. Now Rowan runs the firm, but Black was was a senior guy at Drexel. He's older than Mark Rowan. Was a senior guy at Drexel, and again, a brilliant guy who made a lot of money as a result of junk bonds. Really, Michael Milken's junk bonds. But so I'm a huge fan of Rowan and Black and of course you all know Michael Milken's one of my heroes. But I don't have any particular stories or anything he has told me that would, I think, be of interest. No, I actually think I will guarantee this. So Bob Hill, Scott, says it might be fair to call Trump an economist more than Robert Reich anyway. No, I absolutely disagree with you, and I think you would fail that test. Robert Reich knows economics a lot more than Donald Trump. In that sense, Robert Reich is more evil than Trump in the sense that he knows the economics and he argues against it in spite of that. But he knows the economics. He knows it really well. I've seen papers that Robert Reich has written about issues, economic issues, and he knows what's right. He knows the economics, and then he argues against it for moral, philosophical reasons, because that's what drives the world, and he knows it. Robert Reich is collectivist, so is Trump. They're all collectivists. Who's not a collectivist in the world in which we live? All right. Ryan says, hi, Yaron. Just popped in to make a contribution. The show with Robert Zubrin was awesome. Yeah, a lot of people really like that show. I'm really glad. It was fun, positive, interesting, different. Yeah. You can say, oh, my God, all you want, but reality is what it is. Robert Reich knows economics and then ignores it. Donald Trump doesn't know economics. Andrew, with much respect, if you don't understand Rand's premise of man worship, don't you think you should categorize it as such, not as disagreement? It implies she, immortal genius, is wrong. But you just, I didn't say I disagreed. Did I say I disagree with her? Yeah, I mean, I don't completely agree, or I don't completely understand. That's what I said. I think what I said was I didn't completely understand. So, if I really thought she was wrong, I would say I think she's wrong. I don't know that she was wrong, but I don't completely understand. And I'm sure if she was here to explain it better and to articulate her reasoning, I might be convinced. She doesn't write enough about it. Some of it is concretized, obviously, in the novels. And I respond positively to that, but that's not a philosophical argument. So I don't view it as a disagreement or that I think she's wrong. I view it as I don't understand. So I'm even, that's where it is. I think Jason disagrees with her, and I think he can defend that. He can say, I disagree with, that's fine. I don't disagree. I just don't understand her perspective and don't have a full understanding of it. Yeah, I'll be in Lisbon on Tuesday, by the way, and I'll be in Porto. Anybody been to Porto? It's actually a beautiful city in northern Portugal. I'll be in Porto on Monday. So I'll be in Porto on Monday, in Lisbon on Tuesday. I'll be in Düsseldorf. There must be some listeners from Düsseldorf. You should come on Wednesday. Cambridge. I'll be participating in a debate at Cambridge on Thursday. And in Amsterdam, well, not in Amsterdam, in Gouda on Friday. And then Oslo Sunday and Berlin Monday. So if you're in any of those places, please join us. Please join us. You should tell your software developer in Porto to come and see me. David says, can U.S. manipulate its currency? Dollar is reserve currency of the rest of the world. How is the value of the dollar actually set? Well, it's set by demand and supply in markets, but sure, the U.S. has often manipulated its own currency. I mean, often all it takes is, for example, in 1987, Secretary of the Treasury, this is under Ronald Reagan, came out on a weekend and said to the world, this is in October of 1987, and he said to the world, we are committed to devaluing the dollar. The dollar is too expensive. We want to make it cheaper, and we will do that. And on Monday, the following Monday, the Monday after he said that, the S&P 500 went down 25%, called Black Monday. Black Monday. Some of you might have experienced it, lived through it, traded through it, maybe even. I remember it, and that's when Alan Greenspan made his name. The Greenspan put was implemented in order to stop the bleeding on Wall Street. The first real big market bailout was in October 1987. All right, guys, we are $21 short of our second hour goal. We are 5 minutes away from that second hour. So $21. Somebody do a $20 question and we'll get over it. Yeah, so the U.S. can manipulate its currency by selling dollars in world markets. It can manipulate the currency by artificially lowering interest rates, and you know, we know that the Federal Reserve is willing and able to go in even long-term interest rates and lower those long-term interest rates. And if interest rates go down, people don't want to hold dollars. They sell dollars, and the value of the dollar vis-a-vis other currencies goes down. So absolutely, the U.S. can manipulate its currency. It's harder to do because it's such a big currency, right? And it is the reserve currency, but it is possible, and it's been done, and it continues to be done. And Donald Trump is going to. He said he's going to try to do it. We'll see if he actually does it, but he has said he's going to try to do it. Thank you, Arum, and thank you, Mary Aline, for coming in with some stickers. We're still $12 short of our second hour goal, and we have 3 minutes to achieve it. Let's see what you guys can do in 3 minutes. The clock is ticking. All right. Marcus, Yaron, Tasha and I, Tasha and I thoroughly enjoyed meeting you at your event in Nashville, Tennessee. Being able to eat with you that evening was wonderful. Question, outside of biological sex of a person, is gender a stolen concept? I don't know. It would have to be clear what gender refers to. You know, and what attributes it refers to. And I don't have a definitive answer. I'm not an expert on this. Again, certainly there are people whose biological sex is somewhat there's a question about the biological sex, but you'd have to think about what is the referent in reality that gender applies to. And I did a show on this a while back, and I thought about it back then, and I did some research to some extent about it back then, but it's not top of mind, so I can't recreate it, unfortunately. But I also enjoyed meeting you and Tasha. It was great, and the fact that you drove for 5.5 hours, 6 hours to come and see me in Nashville is really, really, really appreciated. It was a lot of fun, and yeah, dinner was great afterwards, and the event itself was fabulous. And yeah, thank you for coming. It's great to meet you guys, Marcus and Tasha in particular, but any of you guys who come to my events. It's really, really, I value it a lot to be able to put faces. Not that I retain the face, because I probably won't recognize you next time I see you, because I don't hold it. But it's just wonderful to know that you're investing your time to come and see me, and it's just nice to put a face to a name, put a face to somebody out there. I don't think gender relates to trans. That's my point. What does gender relate to? Now, you see, this is exactly, the Bob Hale is now, jumping to conclusions, right? Yaron is pro-trans. Am I pro-trans? Did I say I was pro-trans? What does it mean to be pro-trans? What does it mean to be anti-trans? Should we take out all the trans and shoot them? Or do trans not exist, and therefore there's nobody to shoot? What does any of that mean? Well, that requires thinking, and people with mindless Trump syndrome can't do that. Is there such a thing as gender if there's no trans thing? And are there people who are really, really confused about their sexuality and their identity? Yeah, I mean, they are. Clearly they are. Not to say it's good or bad, not to say it's rational or not rational, but are there people like that? Yes, they are. And then the question is, how do you deal with that? How do you treat it? How do you function? There are people out there who think they're trans. And not think because they think they're a cat, but because something is wrong psychologically or physiologically in them. And unless you're willing to be objective and approach the whole issue objectively and analyze it objectively, you know, you can yell all you want, but it's a woman, it's a man, it's meaningless. You've got to actually think about what's going on, and you've got to actually understand what's going on. And this is, again, it's kind of mindless conservatism is what typically is there. Wyatt 516 says, must you now see the bad in Trump to prove you were right about him? Or are there things he could do that would get you to say you judged him harshly? What a loaded question, Wyatt. It's so nice to see people approach these questions with objectivity and without a bias and an inclination to trap me into something. Must you now? No, I must not see bad in Trump. I see what I see, right? I always try to be objective. I'm always available to be called on facts, but the reality is nobody ever challenges me on fact. What you get is the snide stupidity of a Bob or people like that, but you don't actually get facts. Is the guy who is nominated for Health and Human Services, is RFK qualified to be in charge of our healthcare? I'd like to see facts to contradict what I'm saying. Do you think that his nominee for the Department of Defense, objectively has the qualifications for the job? I'd like to see facts. I'd like to see an argument. But I never see that. I see whiny people. Oh, Yaron has TDS, so the whole thing is stupid. Now, have I judged him too harshly? No, I haven't judged him too harshly. That doesn't mean he won't do good things. He did good things the first term. I've said that he did good things the first term. That doesn't change my valuation of him as a person. Doesn't change my valuation of him as destroying the Republican Party. It doesn't change my valuation of him being an important step in the United States becoming an authoritarian state. It doesn't change my opinion of him about any of the fundamental issues I have with Trump. Is there something he could do to change that? Yeah, but he's not going to do it. It's never going to happen because he actually is what he is. And he's beyond change. Is the fact that he has no disregard for the American Constitution at issue? I've never seen anybody actually present a case other than that. So, if anything, Emil says he's obviously qualified to be the Secretary of Defense because he's a Fox News contributor. I know you said that as a joke, but that's exactly the point. So, all I get is no. I'm gonna call it like I see it. When he does something good, I'll tell you it's good, but I won't tell you out of context of why and what he did. So anyway, that is. I'm not changing my attitude towards Trump. I've had the same attitude for 9 years, and nothing he has done has caused me to second guess or to change my opinion of it. And nothing, some of you guys have done is made me change my opinion of the mindless Trump syndrome that exists out there. I Like Number says, is the EACC movement compatible with objectivism? No, I don't think so. I don't think it's a movement that's based on a proper philosophy. It comes out of the rationalist movement and comes out of the effective altruism movement. To the extent that it comes out of those movements, it's, to a large extent, it is corrupted by them. Now, does the EACC movement have good things? Absolutely. Are there certain things that are compatible and consistent with objectivism? Yes. I mean, build, baby, build. We're all for that. So they are not, deep down, they're not philosophically compatible, but they are compatible in application, in action, on certain issues. Michael Sanders asks, will they eliminate taxes and overtime? No, they will not. I mean, add that to my prediction list. It's just too messy. It's too complicated. What counts as overtime? There are exempt employees and non-exempt employees, and exempt employees will now want to be non. It's just too much of a mess, and it's too much of a little detail than anyone was going to, die on the barricades in order to get this particular promise Trump made passed. Andrew, the claim that the sexes behave differently only because society programs sounds conspiratorial. Who's to say that society hasn't evolved around the differences by effect of those differences rather than man-made manipulation? Well, I think there's a lot going on here, Andrew, right? Because in a hunter-gatherer society, right, and I'm not doing evolutionary psychology here, I'm just explaining behavior, right? In a hunter-gatherer society, it completely makes sense for the men to go out and hunt and do and fight, and for the women to take care of the home life, take care of the babies, and basically forage for food, and take care of the meat once it gets back to cook. And it's quite possible that a lot of our behaviors, not our genes, but our behaviors, have been set by our conditioning during that society. Now, in addition, once we go and become peasants, farmers, the same thing is true. Farming is a very physical activity. It makes sense for the men to go out into the field and do that, and for the women to stay home and do all the things that they need to do. And therefore, we've had 100,000 years of conditioning to a certain, taking into account particular biological differences, strength. I'm just taking one, right? Strength. And conditioning our behavior to that. Suddenly, here we are in the 21st century, where strength is, for the most part, irrelevant. What matters now is intelligence. Now, other aspects, risk-taking and other things, but, these are all within the sphere of choice. These are all within the sphere of reason. They're all within the sphere of why should there be a difference between man and woman? And therefore, it could be that come the 21st century, women, because the parameter that provides for survival, the parameter that provides for success, is not physical. It's not material. It's the mind. That that now society has to reprogram itself. It has to now abandon something that it is internalized for 100,000 years. Now, we know that's hard because, for example, we see with altruism, for example, that altruism has been, basically part of humanity for so long that it's almost impossible to uproot it. Well, could it be that our attitude towards women has been part of our world for so long, 100,000 years, that even though it's irrelevant in modern life, it's very difficult to uproot, and it hangs around. So again, I am speculating. I'm just giving a counter-argument, although a counter-argument makes sense to me. This is why, for example, I've said the whole concept of masculinity and femininity evolves, has to evolve based on what it means to be a hero, if you accept Ayn Rand's vision, and what it means to be, that is, even if you accept Ayn Rand's vision, and what it means to deal with reality. I consider Steve Jobs masculine, but and Andrew Tate non-masculine, a barbarian, which is not masculine, primitive, can't survive in the modern world, really, a scammer. So it's, these things have to evolve. Our attitudes towards these things have to evolve. And what was justified, maybe, and even then it wasn't completely justified, 1,000 years ago is not justified today. But even back then, there were women who were incredibly successful in areas of the mind or in areas of art, and they were suppressed. They were denied the ability to do those things because of a male chauvinistic society. Ooh, a lot of questions. Michael says, I'm not so sure the Trump phenomenon is a domino effect to dictatorship. He could just be a fluke, and in 2028 we get DeSantis. But DeSantis could be the next domino towards dictatorship. Why are you so happy about DeSantis? I'm very critical of DeSantis. DeSantis was awful in Florida, has done awful, horrible things in Florida, and acted often like a little dictator in Florida. So why is DeSantis disproving the domino effect? He could be just the next step towards that. I think it's much more likely that we get J.D. Vance, and then the domino effect happens much faster. But I don't see why DeSantis is the hero here. Michael, did Trump make being a Republican cool amongst young people? Before Trump, it was a norm for young people to be nihilist, hedonistic, leftist. I don't think either of that is true. I think, first of all, you have to separate women and men. Trump did well among young men, not among young women. So he definitely made it cool to be a Republican among young men. There's no question about that. But I don't think those young men were nihilistic, hedonistic leftists before that. I just think they were maybe nothing before that, or non-political, or who knows. But there's only a very small percentage of students. I mean, this is important. There's only a very small percentage of students who are actually nihilistic, hedonistic leftists. Michael, how can the Jews in Israel don't do a Holocaust against the Arab Muslim minority given the constant violence and terrorism? Because they're civilized. Because the Holocaust was done on them and they know the impact. I think they should be tougher on the Arabs, but because they realize that there are innocents there, and they're always endlessly hopeful that they can find the better people there and cut a deal with them. All right, given that we're going deep into a third hour, there is a fee. There is a cost. So we're now entering the third hour, $250 an hour, which means we have to raise $225 in this third hour to make our goal. Stickers would be appreciated because I've got a lot of questions here. Or if you're going to make a question, make it a significant one. $20, $50, $100, $200 would get us right to where we need to be. Michael, anti-Semitism isn't like ordinary racism. It's a political formation. It's a mechanism for building coalitions and climbing to power. No, I don't think that's right. I mean, anti-Semitism is not like other forms of racism. I agree with that. It's a deeply rooted hatred that originates with religion. It originates with Christians. And it is a means by which psychologically people from one group, it contributes to their self-esteem. It's a justification. It's a form of justification. And I mean, I will do. I'm going to work on a talk on anti-Semitism. I think anti-Semitism is a really interesting topic. The history is interesting, and it's important to get that history. Michael, does a wise man never feel lonely? Yeah, I don't think a wise man should ever feel lonely. I mean, a wise man finds good people to surround himself with. So if you're going to be wise, you should be wise about, you know, being wise should include finding the right people to surround yourself with. All right, Drin, Putin is a gangster, granted, but use nuclear weapons, no. He'll throw you out the window. Is he that dangerous for the Allies to fear him so much? No, I've said this over and over and over again. You know, World War III is just a way for the West to you know, broadcast its weakness. That's all it is. They should not be afraid of Putin. Putin's not going to use nukes. He's afraid of his own shadow. He's a gangster. Gangsters are fearful. They're not men of self-esteem and confidence. And he is not. And so I would not worry about that. Throwing out of windows remind me, I lost this. So over the weekend, the leading Russian male ballet dancer, who is a critic of the war, fell out of the fifth-story window and died. You can't make this up. So the leading ballet dancer in Russia fell out of a window. Fell, because, ballet dancers don't have good balance. And he died. So, and, this is the guy that, what's her name? Tulsi is friendly with. This is the guy Trump wants to kind of deal with. This is the regime that, everybody wants to cozy up to. Everybody on the right, J.D. Vance and people like that, want to cozy up to. Putin is not crazy enough to use nuclear weapons. No. He values his life too much. Does Steve Miller creep you out objectively? Steve Miller. Who's Steve Miller? I'm not sure who Steve Miller is. Jason, was there an attempt to slow exuberance in the 20s and cause a depression? Could that happen again? Oh, Stephen Miller. Yeah, Stephen Miller absolutely creeps me out objectively. He is one of the creepiest person. Because he's the closest you'll get to an explicit racist in the administration, and he really is a bad guy. I don't think there was a attempt to slow down exuberance. I think there certainly was towards the late 20s a number of mistakes made by the Fed. First, to increase the money supply too much, lower interest rates too low, and keep them low for too long. And then the response to that was but I don't think it was, and then the response to that was to increase interest rates, because the effect of that wasn't the issue of exuberance. The effect of that was they were going to get inflation. Things were, the crash was going to happen, and interest rates were too low. So there was a crash that ultimately led to the Great Depression. The Great Depression was actually caused by a bunch of other things. But you could see that kind of dynamic happen. You could see, a stock market crash combined with tariffs, combined with just the stupidity of the people surrounding Trump, bringing us towards some kind of economic catastrophe. But I don't think it would be motivated by an attempt to slow exuberance. It would be mostly motivated by their own ignorance and stupidity. October 19th, 1987, Jeremy reminds me, it was Black Monday, it was called. It was his stepmother's birthday. The S&P dropped 25% in one day. Michael, RFK is like the Emperor of Japan, symbolic, but has no actual power. Why is that? I don't understand why that is. He's the head of Health and Human Services. He'll get to decide the priorities of the department, the priorities of healthcare investment, the priorities of how healthcare dollars are spent. The United States government is the largest spender on healthcare. It's a huge spender, the largest spender in the United States, certainly. So, yeah. No, he's not. He's not just symbolic. That's ridiculous. Alexis wants hot tea as well. In England, that should be easy, Alexis. Tea is just flowing everywhere. It's England. All right, guys. We are lagging on those goals for the third hour. Can we have some positive episodes? Elections got me feeling down. Yeah, I'll figure out something. Supkaski, you should get a Blue Sky account. I have too many accounts already. I can't handle another one. Mary Aline, if I had to moderate all the comments, I couldn't listen to Yaron, who would want to do that. What a headache. I agree with Mary Aline. Frank, is neoliberalism related to capitalism? Is it bad? Neoliberalism is not a reality. There is no such thing as neoliberalism. It's an anti-concept. It doesn't exist. It's just a smear that the left has created in order to tarnish free trade. So neoliberalism is the idea of free trade and some limited deregulation. But it's also the celebration of the mixed economy. And in that sense, yeah, it's related to capitalism in a sense that it's a mixed economy with a little bit of capitalism, but it's not pro-capitalist. Is it bad? No, it's not bad relative to the socialist, statist, Trumpist alternative, because it's just the regular middle of the road mixed economy with free trade. But it's not capitalism. It's not good in that sense. Jennifer says, I think birth control helped change women's roles. Yeah, I mean, birth control had a huge impact. Women's roles were already changing. They were changing already in the 19th century. You had real women artists who had their own careers. You had women, emancipation. The fact that sometime in the 19th century, women were allowed to own property. I mean, women have been liberated, have enjoyed a semblance of equal rights for a very, 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 very short period of time. And we don't know how society is going to evolve in terms of women's roles, given how short a time we've had what we have today. Things were already evolving. I mean, Ayn Rand is the first female philosopher. So women's roles were already evolving dramatically. Before the pill helped a huge amount because it liberated them from the fear, birth control generally liberated them from the fear of pregnancy, a massive, massive, massive fear, which has huge consequences, health and social and monetary and everything else. So yes, birth control was a big step forward towards liberating choices, increasing choices for women. Okay, Mary Aline, I think wise men are sometimes lonely because of the mind-body dichotomy. Oh, in that sense, yes. Look at Hank Rearden. How do you define wise? Rearden was brilliant at his work, less so in his personal life. I think wise is you'd have to have, you know, that. You have to have more than just brilliant at work, right? Wise is brilliant at life. So it's broader. And it's not brilliant in the sense of IQ, it's brilliant in the sense of learn from experience, learn from what you study, learn from what's around you, and, you know, and integrated that. I think that's what wisdom is. Robert says, that's a great point, which you also made in a recent episode. Actual nihilists are a small minority of students and of people more generally. That's absolutely right. Frank, are you following Daniel Penny trial? Can he win? I mean, I think it's likely that he win. I don't think they're going to be able to find him beyond a reasonable doubt, but we'll see. We'll see how the jury. I haven't been following the trials. I haven't been following all the evidence. But, you know, just based on what I know, it doesn't seem like he should be prosecuted. It doesn't seem like he should be found guilty. But I don't know that much. I haven't been following in detail. No. Rafael, what's the talk you like to give the most and why? I don't know, because it really depends on where I am and so on. I like to give new talks. But also, I love to give my capitalism talks because it's easy, it's honed, it's really good, and it gets people thinking. There's no question that it gets people thinking and responding and reacting. Ian, polls, community posts also boost engagement a lot on YouTube. Even little updates. Yeah, I should do a poll. I haven't done a poll in a long time. We should do a poll. Maybe we should do a poll whether to give Bob the Scott treatment. Given that he is Scott, I think he deserves it. Drin, is China more dangerous than Russia? How do you fight the producer of your goods, abandon it completely? Should U.S. prepare for a war with China and how? All right, so I'm going to do a whole episode on that question. So you're going to have to wait. Alex Epstein, I think, is going to sponsor that show. We might actually do as an interview where he interviews me. But that's going to be the whole thrust of our entire show, and I think I need an hour to explain that. I do think China is potentially more dangerous than Russia. Not right now, but potentially. Yeah, anyway, so to be answered in a full show at some point. It's complicated. Unwinding, dealing with China is complicated. Jeremy, it seems that YouTube now has a way to set super chat goals. You sure if it's rolled out to everyone yet? I haven't seen that. Good point. I've got my YouTube contact. I'm going to ask her. Let me just make a note. Super chat goals in YouTube. Okay. I'm going to check up on that. Thank you, Jeremy. Really appreciate that. Andrew, agree with you that sex roles are evolving in a technological age. Do you think it's insecurities in both sexes that lead to arguments that the sexes are entirely different or not at all? If so, it implies underlying fear. Yes, I also think it's. I mean, I don't know if maybe there's some fear, but it's also just confusion. I think there's genuine confusion. It's genuinely a difficult topic. It's genuinely a confusing topic. If you're a woman that's incredibly successful, has run corporations, has built stuff, has created stuff, I get why Rand's view of femininity is difficult. Even though Rand recognizes that her view of femininity applies to and recognizes that women can do all that. But it's just not easy then in another realm of life to say, but in another realm of life, my orientation is towards a man. So it's just a complicated, difficult issue that it's hard for people to get their minds around and their esteem around, I guess. So, I mean, Dagny is the perfect illustration of Rand's view of, I think, a healthy woman. I mean, I think Dagny is the best illustration we have. And she's obviously a boss and a manager and a leader of men. And yet she has, Ayn Rand, the way she describes her, described as in feminine terms, in terms of relationship to gold. How you apply that to your own personal life, how you integrate that into your own value hierarchy, your own value system, not easy to do and not easy to wrap your head around. Fender Harper, Equal is unfair cover on a shirt would be pretty good. It's on a shirt. Go to the store. You can find it. Lucinda started watching Peacock's Objective Communication course yesterday. Been greatly enjoying it, and I'm trying to get my girlfriend to watch it as well. It is a phenomenal course. So yes, and all of you should be listening to all of Leonard Peacock's courses. That is, I don't, to be an objectivist, to really understand the philosophy, I think Leonard Peacock's courses are required. So go listen. All right, everybody, I need to run. Need to rest up, get some dinner. I will thank my wife for the tea. I will see you all tomorrow. Hopefully, if I'm doing well, another show tomorrow, probably 2.5, 3 hour show tomorrow. And the same thing on Friday. We'll see about Saturday. And thank you guys. I will see you then. Bye, everybody.